Good morning. It is Wednesday. I have to really think. July 26th at about 7 in the morning. My name's Larry Cedar, back with you for another session on scanning. Just like it sounds, SCANNING. Scanning is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. And I'm going to be really quick this time with the intro because I really want to spend as much time as possible actually scanning. So these techniques are based on the writings of a man named Thaddeus Golas, who wrote that everything in the universe is either doing one of two things at any given moment: contracting or expanding. Squeeze your hands together, contracting, release, expanding. So based on that book, and I recommend you read it, The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, very slim little volume. I've been reading it for years. Based on that, and looking at my life, I began to realize that at those moments when I felt most at peace was when I was most expanded. And when I felt tense or in pain or frustrated or angry or confused was when I was overly contracted. And I want to emphasize that the word overly contracted, because contraction in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's the stuff of life. This session is a contraction. I've got my phone and I've got these ideas and I'm presenting them to you. We brought together materials and substances to have a event, a session, a class. This is what we do all day. Everything that happens in your life is a contraction. When you're doing the opposite, which is expansion, you're empty, you're silent, you're nothing. There's nothing wrong with that either, because what we have in life is a vacillation between contraction and expansion. We move between these constantly. When we're contracted, we're working, we're thinking, we're doing, we're building. When you become overly contracted, you become stressed about that. You worry, you're tense, your body becomes tight, your mind becomes confused. When we do the opposite is expansion. We release, we let go, we open ourselves up, we accept, we relax, we come to a place of peace and silence and stillness. So what you want in life is a balance. We're not trying to get rid of contraction. That's the stuff of life. We're trying to find a balance where we have equal amounts of expansion until we are centered. And the way we achieve it through scanning is through the incremental release of muscular tension. The muscles are the perfect metaphor for this continuum as described by Thaddeus Golas, contraction, expansion, because muscles can either contract, make a fist, or expand, release. They can't do both at the same time. It's impossible to contract and expand at the same time. And you can rapidly vary between the two. That's why we have in the universe waves. But you can either do one or the other, and we move back and forth constantly between them. So the muscles are the perfect way to bring yourself into an expanded state, learning to use the muscles in this way. Because as you release tension in the muscles, you are expanding. And every bit of expansion counts on that continuum. So even if you move the dial just a fraction, you have expanded. You brought yourself closer to center. So we use the muscles in this technique. There's no thinking involved. There's no words to learn. There's no mantra to recite. There's no concern about quieting our mind. We don't concern ourselves with the mind. We work strictly with the muscles. When the muscles begin to relax, your body moves into a more expanded state. Your thoughts will quiet because you can't contract and expand at the same time. So as you move into a more expanded state, your mind also begins to expand. You let go of all your obsessive thoughts, your worries, your concerns, or even just thinking about a certain project. Let's say you want to take a break from that and you can't stop thinking about it. Well, as you expand, your mind lets go of that. And you can afford to do that. You can always come back to it. But we have trouble expanding. Why? Because we want to hang on. We want to hang on to our thoughts, our ideas, our concerns, because we feel that gives us control. So instinctively, we don't want to let go. And I always say, after years and years of practicing scanning, I still have a hard time starting every single time because I'm very contracted by nature. I think, I do, I plan, I talk, I build, I practice. This is, a practice session is a form of contraction. So I'm very contracted by nature. But at those times when I want to scan and let go and expand, I have to drop all of that. And you begin by releasing muscular tension. Even squeezing your hands together, 3, 2, 1, and release, you've begun expanding. So that's the process. That's all I'll say in terms of introduction. I like to introduce every session just to kind of refamiliarize yourself with the concepts. But that's the basic premise. So we start every session with deep breaths and stillness and silence, because breaths are expansive by nature. So it's a way of kickstarting you into a more expanded state. And stillness and silence is the cessation of doing and saying and speaking. So those are a cessation of contraction. So these two simple things, deep breaths, three things, deep breaths, stillness, silence, bring us into a more expanded state on a very gentle kind of startup level. So whenever you have any doubt, you say, I just don't want to scan. I don't want to do it. Well, start by taking a breath or a series of breaths, followed by stillness and silence. And this will bring you into a slightly more expanded state. Any amount of expansion is good. So let's start with 3 breaths, 3 deep breaths, followed by 15 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. It's amazing how many times throughout the day we just forget to breathe. So take a moment. If you learn nothing else from these sessions, it's remember to breathe. 2 and 3. Now just sit for 15 seconds in absolute stillness and silence, and don't move a muscle, but continue to breathe. It's something we rarely do during the day. Absolute stillness and silence, 15 seconds. Deep breath. Now, one of the most fundamental concepts of scanning is noticing, paying attention, noticing things, noticing the changes you feel as you start to expand. That's how you learn to expand, by starting to notice how you did it, what it feels like. So take a minute. How do I feel? I took 3 deep breaths and I sat for 15 seconds in stillness and silence. Do I feel any different? A lot of times just taking the time to stop what you're doing makes you feel different. Taking deep breaths oxygenates your body. You may feel calmer. Sitting in stillness and silence, same thing, because we've stopped doing. So we've moved ourselves slightly from a contracted into a slightly more expanded state. So pay attention, because what you're going to start to do when we get into what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique, which is muscular release, is you're going to pay attention to where there's contraction in your muscles and how it feels when you let that contraction go. The beautiful thing for me about scanning is that all that's involved is muscular release. There's no philosophy, there's no try to quiet your mind, there's no anything except muscular release. This is your guide, which will lead you into a more expanded state. So now we did 3 breaths, and now we'll do 5 expanding, and 30 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. 5 deep breaths. Here we go. Two more. And finally 5. 30 seconds. Absolute stillness. Don't move a muscle. And absolute silence. 30 seconds. But continue to breathe. Deep breath. Couple of things. If you find deep breaths difficult, or if they make you dizzy, that's natural. Don't be concerned. What you're doing is you're moving yourself from a contracted, held state into an open, expanded state. So you're infusing your body with oxygen, which can make you a little dizzy if you're not used to it. You're, in a way, shocking yourself by opening yourself up. That can be frightening and disorienting. It's like taking all your clothes off in public. It's like, what's going on here? You're opening up. And if you've held a contracted position for an extended period of time, and pretty much I hold a contracted position all day, because out of concerns and out of work, it goes against your instincts to let go in that way. So you might find yourself fighting it. So if you find these deep breaths difficult, that's a natural response to expansion. The body wants to contract, the mind wants to contract. Contracting in and of itself is a holding of sorts. You don't want to let go, so you'll feel resistance. That's an excellent sign that you're up against your own contraction. If you feel resistance, it should encourage you to continue and to move forward and go further because you're actually experiencing your own contracted state. It's like exposing you. It's saying, here's where you're at. You see? See how contracted you are? Let's move past that. So don't be concerned if you feel disoriented. Second thing, if after taking the breaths and sitting in silence, you kind of don't feel like doing anything or saying anything or moving, that's perfect. You've already begun to expand. One of the things that begins to happen as you expand is you care less. You worry less, you think less, you plan less. You're more in a place of emptiness and silence and nothingness. And suddenly time isn't so important because time is a contraction. It's a delineation of moments into seconds, minutes, hours, days. And as you expand, those delineations just don't matter anymore. There's just now. So you might find yourself feeling a little more still, a little more quiet, a little less concerned. You might not even want to continue this session. You might say, I don't even want to think about this right now, and turn it off. That's great. That's fine. But again, what we're doing is paying attention to the changes that occur as you start to expand. How do you feel different? The greater your awareness of the contrast between your contracted state and your expanded state, the greater your capacity to control your movement between those two states. And awareness is the first step. Once you begin to become aware of what it feels like to be contracted versus how it feels to be expanded, you can choose to move into whichever state you like. Final phase, 7 deep breaths followed by a full minute, 60 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Again, we're expanding, we're opening ourselves up. 7 deep breaths, here we go. Two more. And finally 7. 60 seconds. Absolute stillness and silence. Close your eyes if you like or not. And continue to breathe. And just count slowly to 60. Deep breath. Now, many times when I've begun to scan or I'm sitting in stillness and silence, I'll literally forget where I am, what I'm doing, what day it is. And that's a sign of expansion. Again, days are delineations. Purpose, intent is a delineation. It's a contraction. So as you begin to expand, you might find yourself going, wait a second, what am I doing here? You lose your hold on your plan, your conceptions, your ideas, your intent. You come to, again, to a place of nothingness, which is an expanded state. Typically, that feels really good. Again, you'll hear your inner self wanting to hang on to its contractions. It may argue with you, but you'll begin to relent eventually as your body and mind and spirit begin to recognize that there's nothing dangerous about expansion. You're not at risk by letting go. It will give into it and embrace it and enjoy it. So these are just things to watch for. Again, a big part of this process of scanning is paying attention to the changes you feel in your mind and body as you progress from a contracted to an expanded state. Okay, now we get into what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique. Again, scanning, just to repeat, is the incremental release of muscular tension from this to this. The incremental release of muscular tension to induce a deep state of physical, body, emotional, feelings, and mental thoughts calm. Your muscles release, that's the physical. Your emotions release, you begin to feel. You're not holding in your emotions. You may begin to feel things, which can be scary, but that's good. You're actually freeing up your emotional mechanism. And your mind, your thoughts begin to dissipate. And you become calmer. You don't feel a compulsion to think. Thinking, words are a contraction. So we're moving into that state, and we use the muscles to make that happen. So let's begin. So again, the incremental release of muscular tension. All you need to remember with this technique is if you want to scan, find a muscle in your body that you're aware of, tune into how contracted it may or may not be, and release it. That's it. That's the technique. You did it. Now you can take that as far, as long, as deeply as you like. I've scanned for 30 seconds. I've scanned for an hour and a half. It's up to you. There's no requirement that you do any certain amount. I keep a log to keep track as a way of encouraging myself to at least do an hour a day, but it can come that hour in the form of 6 10-minute sessions, a 5-minute, a 20, however you do it. The point is to start to infuse your life with this process of muscular release and expansion, and thereby achieve balance in your life until the technique becomes a part of your life. And you start to recognize that when you're contracted, it's time to scan and expand. It can be as simple as a deep breath. You might be sitting feeling tense or worried and say, if I just take a deep breath, just sit for even 10 seconds in stillness and silence, I will move myself into a more expanded state. That's it. So I've divided my body, just for reference sake, into 8 zones. Zone 1 is the face. Zone 2 is the top of the head. Zone 3 is the back of the head. Zone 4 is the neck. Zone 5 is the shoulders. Zone 6 is what I call the plate of armor, the chest, stomach, in front of the waist. Zone 7 is down the back and into the entire pelvis. And Zone 8, the final zone, is down the legs and into the feet. These are suggested areas you can work on for muscular release. Start with any one of them. They don't have to be in any particular order. What I do is I work through 1 through 8, and then I repeat. And I keep cycling through. And each time I go through the cycle, I find myself moved a little bit more into an expanded state. And at some point, for me, it's around 10 minutes, my body goes, oh, I see. I see where we're headed. And I'll take a deep breath. And my entire body will let go. And then I'll stay in that state for as long as I like or can afford to stay, because I got to get back to work, let's say. But that's the completely expanded state. Once you've experienced that, you're going to want to go back to it. It feels wonderful because all obligations, all worries, all concerns, all physical tension have dissipated, and you find yourself in a state of beautiful calm. And once you've experienced it, you're going to want to get back to it. This will encourage you to keep scanning. What I call a chemical expansion is when we drink or smoke, dope or drugs or whatever to get ourselves to that state. These are expansive chemicals. And that's why people crave them, because we crave getting to an expanded state. It feels so much better than being overly contracted. And if we want balance, we want to get back to that as often as we can. But if you want to try I want to say more healthy approach to expansion, then you'll try scanning and you'll do the work that gets to where it's actually part of you and you know how to do that on demand. So let's start with the face. Zone 1. On my count, I want you to, as I'm counting, tune into your face. Feel the musculature. Feel your face. Where's it at? Okay, that's my face. I don't feel anything, but I'm aware of the musculature. And on my count, I want you to consciously release all the tension in the muscles of the face that you can. Just let them go, like turning a switch, like this. You've turned off the power to those muscles. They no longer have the power to contract, and they'll just go, ugh. Okay, so the face. 3, 2, 1, and release. Now, I always feel a drooping sensation, like you look dumb. All this was keeping my muscles up and tight. I just go. So the face is a great place to start, because you can look in the mirror and you can actually see the change. 3, 2, 1, and now you could call that cessation of effort. I've stopped making an effort. I've let go completely. I'm not going to bother having an expression on my face. I'm going to let those muscles just release. 3, 2, 1, and release. So face is a good place to start because you can kind of feel we're very familiar with the face. We use it all day. And you kind of feel the muscles, and you can build that awareness of what it feels like to let those muscles go. 3, 2, 1, and so that sensation, that release of tension, that microscopic release of tension is scanning. That's scanning. That's the essence of scanning. That feeling of, if you were to become a master of scanning, that's what you would have developed an ability to do, to release muscular tension. So you practice. Zone 2 is the top of the head. Tune into the top of your head. How do those muscles feel? You may be a person who doesn't think about their muscles often. You may go, what are you talking about? Well, just don't worry about that. Just try it. I'm an actor. We're trained to think about our bodies all the time. I'm maybe too conscious. But what you want to do is focus your attention on that area. And then on my count, 3, 2, 1, release the tension in the top of your head. 3, 2, 1, and you may feel your forehead relax. You may feel a sensation like they always talk about breaking an egg on your head and feeling the egg, kind of drop down your side of your head. You may feel, as those muscles release, a kind of a drooping, releasing sensation. So now you've released the face. You've released the top of the head. See how that feels. Everyone experiences it differently. It might feel like a relief. You might feel wonderful. You might feel scared. You might get anxious. I get anxious when I have to release muscular tension because I like to be in control. So as I release, I feel like I'm losing control. And no one likes to be out of control. But what you'll discover is it's not a terrible thing to release control. It feels great. You'll start to trust that and you'll start to enjoy it. Zone 3, the back of the head. Think about the muscles at the back of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. And if you think of the muscles at the back of the head like a tight, wide rubber band stretched across the back of your head, when you release it, that rubber band just lets go. And you know what a tense rubber band looks like. And when you let go, it's all floppy and loose. So that's what you're doing with your muscles. You're letting that tension go. Back of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. So let's do all 3. Face, 3, 2, 1, and release. Top of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. Back of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. So now you have this sack of relaxed, kind of flabby muscles just hanging off your skull. And that's the sensation you want, as if you're slack. If you slouch in your chair, that's fine. You're letting go. You're not holding anything. You're not keeping anything up. You're not holding anything together. You're just letting it all go. Zone 4, the neck, 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, the neck. Concentrate on it for a moment. See how it's feeling. And then concentrate on your ability to release whatever muscular tension is in your neck. 3, 2, 1, and let it go. Typically, as I release muscular tension, I have more impulses to breathe, because when you're contracted, you're holding your breath. As you start to expand, you want to let go. Now, your body probably always needs more oxygen than you're giving it, because we tend to walk around tense and holding. So when you start to relax that control, your body is saying to you, thank goodness, now I have the ability to catch up. I'm at an oxygen deficit, and it will send you a message, breathe, and you'll go, you'll often notice that when someone starts to relax, the first thing they do is they take a deep breath, because their body's saying, oh, it's safe to breathe. Give me oxygen. So let that happen. Zone 5 is the shoulders. Let them drop. 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, the shoulders. 3, 2, 1, and release. Let's do all of them. The face. 3, 2, 1. Top of the head. 3, 2, 1. Back of the head. 3, 2, 1. The neck. 3, 2, 1. And the shoulders. 3, 2, 1. Let them drop. And again, taking a moment to experience and make note of how you feel is important. Taking time is part of the expansive process, so never be concerned about taking a lot of time. I move pretty quickly through these zones in these sessions. These sessions serve as for myself and for you, hopefully, a reminder of the technique. But when you're on your own, you could take a half an hour with one zone. And you'll discover for yourself what works for you. But you're basically exploring. You're exploring. You're going in search of pockets of tension throughout your body and releasing them. That's why it's called scanning. You're scanning the body for pockets of tension. And you could do it in any order, in any way you like, for as long as you like. The point is contraction, release of muscular tension. Zone 6, chest, stomach, front of the waist. Focus in on what tension you might feel, how those muscles feel, just how that general area feels. And on my count, release as much muscular tension as you can from that area. 3, 2, 1, and Because that area is associated with breath, you may find yourself having an impulse to take a deep breath. Take it, by all means. Again, we're moving into a more expanded state. Chest, stomach, front of the waist. 3, 2, 1, and release. I take moments of silence to again send a message to my body and my mind that there's no agenda, there's no hurry, we're expanding. When you're contracting is when you feel a compulsion to do, to have a purpose, to fill empty space with words and thoughts. When you're expanding, you feel less compulsion to speak, to fill a space with words or thoughts or plans. You feel much more comfortable just being. So if anywhere in this process you feel the need to do nothing, then do nothing. And it's really important to try and remember that. We all like to set goals for ourselves, and we like to feel like we've accomplished something. That's why I keep this journal and so forth. I can't help it. It's my nature. But what happens when you're in an expanded state is there are no goals. There is just what is. And I say that because it's important in the scanning process to acknowledge even the slightest expansion. Don't feel like, oh, I didn't get very far today, or I don't feel a big change today, just a little change, or I wish I'd done more. You have all these thoughts, so forget all that. The beauty of this technique is it can be done for 30 seconds, and you've accomplished something. You need to start infusing your consciousness with a sense that quantity doesn't matter in an expanded state. Now, I'm a walking contradiction because I keep a journal. I concede that to my contractive self. I want to keep a record of how often I do it. But in truth, one day I'll get to a place where I'm so expanded, I won't keep a journal anymore. It won't matter. Because in an expanded state, there's no lists, there's no counts, there's no quantities, there's no successes or failures. There's just you. I'm human, so I can't help but go back to my contractive habits. But I just want you to be aware of the fact that there's no judgment in an expanded state. There's no standards. There's no benchmarks, because you're just in a place where you exist as a living, breathing human being, and that's enough. Now you'll go back to contractions because you need to make a living. You need to maintain relationships. You need to fix your house. You need to write a book. This is the stuff of life. But you're also allowed to be in the other place, the expanded state, where none of that matters. You can afford that for 30 seconds or 5 minutes, just to visit that place, because what it does, it brings you back to center. You can't be completely expanded. You would perish. You have to eat. You have to get things done. You have to accomplish things. That's contractions. But you can bring yourself to where you're balanced, where you have equal amounts of both. Zone 7, down the back and into the pelvic region, which is a very frequently contracted area. It's the area in which sexuality and waste elimination are based. So there's a lot of feelings of embarrassment and control or lack of control. So relaxing the pelvic area is a real interesting thing. It can feel very threatening. At the same time, because you hold so much tension there, if you can relax the pelvic area, you'll feel a tremendous sense of relief. So down the back, past the waist and into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1. You're going to release those muscles and release. And again, the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. And I snap my fingers because that's the moment at which you go release. And I want you to experience that sense of release. That's scanning. Zone 8 is down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. I'm just looking up at the clock because I don't like to go past a half an hour on these sessions, but we got a couple minutes. Down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet in particular. Think about your feet, and on my count, release whatever microscopic amount of muscular tension you can in the feet. 3, 2, 1, and release. The feet are very sensitive. Very sensitive. So they're amazingly strong, but also very, very sensitive. So if you can release tension in the feet, if you can open up those blood vessels and allow that muscular tension to dissipate and free them, as it were, to be their natural relaxed state, you will go a long way towards improving your health and your state of mind. That's why foot massages feel so good. So down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. 3, 2, 1, and release. One more time, the feet. 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. So We spent about half an hour on scanning. I did a lot of talking. Talking is contractive, so it kind of goes against, the process, but it's necessary to contract to accomplish your goals, which in this case is communicating to you this technique. Very simple. Do as much or as little of it as you like, but the main thing to remember is that scanning is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. If you want to start this process, start with a breath. Squeeze your hands together and then release to remind yourself of what it feels like to release muscular tension. Sit in stillness and silence. Any of those, and you will be scanning. And that's it for today. I recommend you practice because the more you practice, the better you get at it, but never feel compelled or guilty if you don't practice enough. Don't make a thing of it because that's a contractive approach. Just make it part of your life. I end every session with rule number 1, love yourself. Love yourself. This is it. This is what I was given. You have what you were given. We're only given it once and then it's gone. So love, according to Thaddeus Golis, is the most expansive act in the universe because it involves opening up, embracing, and accepting what is. If you can love yourself, you will have expanded. And when you take that expansive love and put it out in the universe, you will be happier and you will make those around you happier as well. So that's rule number 1. That's it. So I'm going to end the session. I will post this on my Facebook page. It'll be up for a while. I'll also post it on the scanning Facebook page. I used to call it SQANNING, but now it's just scanning, SCANNING. And you can go there and see it. I come back whenever I can, and I hope you enjoyed today, and I hope you have a great day, and don't forget to breathe. Take care. Bye-bye.